All right, here we are, the No Name Podcast, episode 4, A New Hope. Okay, I had to say that because today is the day that Star Wars episode 7 comes out. Is that correct?
Quite
and Carson,
correct.
You're going tonight.
Yes, absolutely. Tonight it will be my first visit to the theater to watch episode 7 with my kids and my wife. And we bought our tickets early, but not quite early enough. So we'll be sitting in the second row of an IMAX theater. Should be tons of fun.
My word.
Looking straight up at the screen.
Exactly.
Yeah, I find whenever I sit that close to the movie screen, like I actually have to pick spots of the screen to watch. You can't watch the whole thing at once.
It's too overwhelming.
It's too overwhelming.
Physically impossible.
Yeah, you'd have to be superhuman. All right. Well, I mean, I totally forgot to do introductions to start us off, but that's okay. Speaking of Carson Sampson, also known as Grandpa Carson, he's here with us. We got David Thiessen, of course, from MB Mission. He's going to be interviewing our guest later on the show, who is Sarah Froese from Bread We Break. So we're very excited to have her here. I'm a good friend of hers. And so we'll hear more about that. And of course, myself, I'm Cullen Clausen, also with MB Mission. So we're here and we're excited for today's podcast. Now, to get things started off, guys, I thought I'd ask a question that's very much related to what we're going to be talking today about, and that is worship music. So, I mean, we all have those stories probably of awkward worship music experiences or things that just went wrong on stage, or maybe a great moment that was really powerful. But I want to focus on the weird stuff today. So, because that's often really entertaining. So I'm going to share a story first about a worship leader that I was playing in a band with, and this worship leader, she read out this passage from Revelation, and it was, a really powerful passage and stuff, but then all of a sudden it starts talking about the qualities of Jesus, and one of those qualities was his bronze feet. And she, instead of just passing over it and, making note of it, she started to dwell on the feet of Jesus. And so she started to talk about how great it was and what felt like an eternity of talking about these feet. Finally, she realized, there's like nobody tracking right now. And I mean, of course, it was in a room full of youth. And so it was way over their heads, but it was a good moment, and we laugh about it now. David, do you have any stories?
Oh, my word. Yeah, well, one that comes to mind, so I play bass on a worship team at my home church, McIver MB. And we were getting ready to do the response song at the end of this baptism service, right? And we're all kind of scampering up on stage and getting set up when the drummer comes on, and he's dressed in one of these full, neck to feet Jesus outfits. The big flowing robes with the blue sash around the shoulder or whatever. And unexplained, he was dressed totally normally the rest of the service. We're like, what is up with this guy?
So nobody questioned him.
No, I mean, the audience were kind of snickering, but we just went with it, right? And until at the very end, when we pieced it all together, he explained that he had just baptized somebody during the service, and he's in the change room afterward, which is also the dressing room, and he realizes, hey, I don't have any extra underwear to change into or any pants or anything. And so he's looking around, and, he sees these robes, and so he just puts them on, starts on drumming. Robes are flowing along with his drum.
The first
still.
thing he was able to find.
No, pretty much, yeah.
He's hanging out in the church Sunday school room, and he's like, hey, there's some robes from the actors earlier today.
At least they fit. That's the important.
At least better than the Mary outfit,
Yeah, that's for sure. Carson, how about you?
Well, let's see. I have probably too many to list here. I've been a worship leader at our church for a few years now, and I have your standard mess up stories such as forgotten lyrics or missing lyrics and starting on the wrong key and things like that. That happens fairly regularly, unfortunately. But since you've reminded me earlier by referencing me as Grandpa Carson, I guess it's only fitting I just go back deep into the vault and find something from when I first started out.
Oh yeah.
When we first started this in our church
back in 1957,
something like that. Technology looked very different. And so I sang, the team played, and within arm's reach was an old-fashioned projector, overhead projector. Now, like, if you don't know what that looks like, and I'm pretty confident no one in this room knows what that looks like. It was a big glass and steel box with a glass surface and 2 bulbs that turned the image, inverted it, and projected it onto a screen.
Oh, yeah.
And so what we used in those days were called transparencies. So you could gather what that means. It's a clear plastic sheet of paper. And if you weren't able to print on a transparency from your printer, then you could use a special marker to write and note things and put lyrics, whatever that might be. And so within arm's reach, during a song, during a set, I would be continually whipping the right arm on and off of this projector to throw sheets on, throw sheets off. Oh, heaven forbid I'd have to, go back a verse or a chorus, because that could be disastrous.
Yeah.
And, eventually, over time, we were able to move into the 21st century, or at least even the 20th, and get ourselves a computer and proper projector system, and then it was the dawn of easy worship. But I at that point in time was the pioneer of difficult worship.
Yeah, no kidding.
And so that's my story.
Yeah. I think they really missed a great opportunity in the age of overhead projectors.
Is that right?
Nowadays how have you ever heard of driming?
Sure.
Okay, it's so basically like playing
acting out a skit without words, right?
That's right. So acting out using, your body to tell a story.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they missed out some great shadow puppeting. That could have been a great method of worship that they clearly missed out on. I
was
mean,
ahead of my time.
I would have volunteered
Wow.
in that ministry.
We could always bring it back. I could see it happening.
Yeah, for sure.
And I do have a bit of experience, so I could try to help form the team. So.
Well,
That's
maybe
where those Apple iPod commercials came from. The dancing silhouettes. They were just
of
worshipers.
course. Yeah,
Probably.
they're just worshipers.
Was that you, Carson?
Oh, yeah.
I can't divulge. Under contract.
All right. Well,
yes.
we'll form a committee for shadow puppeting just after this podcast, but we got to get on with it.
Yep.
So we're gonna go on to the interview now with Sarah Froese. So here we go.
Let's go.
All right, well, we're here with Sarah Froese from Bread We Break. Sarah, how's it going?
It's going well. Thanks for having me.
Very good. So we had, our last guest was Kyle Rudge, and he called himself the admiral of his organization. What's your title exactly?
It's lead director, which is not as fun as the admiral of Geekdom Ministries or whatever Kyle does.
Yeah, no, but that's good too. Okay, so tell us a bit about that. How did you get Bread We Break started? What's this all about?
I was living in Calgary about 4 years ago for a brief time, and I grew up going to the same church my whole life, and so I had only had one church experience, which I really value and really love, and I still go there. But when I went to Calgary, I decided to try a bunch of different churches and just kind of see what was going on in that city. And something I noticed is they had such a vibrant worship scene. There were so many weekly worship nights I could go to. I could go like every night of the week. And then I came home really hungry for a place to worship, just a set of open doors and a long period of time where I could just be with the Lord with my peers. And there wasn't really anything. And so I talked to my mentor about it and just felt like God was saying to me, like, you should just start something then. They're like, it's just as easy as opening a set of doors, really. And my mentor supported me and my church supported me. And so I found some teammates, including Cullen was one of my first teammates for Bread We Break, and it went from there.
Okay, so that was how long ago now?
We're in our 4th year of ministry now. We started September of 2012, I guess. So it would have been early on in 2012 that it kind of started to form.
Okay, so for those who don't know, what happens on a Bread We Break night? What happens on these events?
So the 3 kind of pillars of who we are and the things that we make sure to do every time we meet together is worship together, have communion together, and fellowship together. So it's a citywide, province-wide young adult ministry that seeks to do those 3 things together, to see the church united in fellowship as we worship together through music, through sharing testimonies, other various ways as well, and we take communion together and remember Christ's sacrifice for us every time as well.
So if a bunch of different churches are represented, how many do you think would be there on any given night?
Between 80 to 100 churches per event probably, and we meet just 5 times a year, just every other month.
100 churches per
yeah,
event.
Yeah, lots
amazing.
and lots of denominations, and
that's amazing.
Lots of small town churches as well from around the province.
Yeah, and of course it's not just about the numbers, but how many people would that mean then are attending?
Well, lately we have been maxing out our space. So lately between 650 and 800.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty wild. We weren't really that was never really the goal, or even I don't think we even dreamed that big at the beginning. But yeah.
So getting that many people together in a room, what do you think is the hunger there? Is it to worship with other churches?
That's a good question. I think there's something in Christian culture, like people love to worship. Almost everyone in the world responds to music. There's some kind of music that can move people. And I believe that's because God created music for that reason. He created music to change atmospheres, to bring us into intimacy with Him. And so worship through music is just, it's like from what I hear from people, it's probably the most common way that people feel connected to God, or can focus on the Lord for like a longer period of time. I find like I can pray with a lot more focus if there's some music happening. So I think like just the fact that there is a worship space, there is music, it'll be a couple hours long, people can come and go, there's no pressure, that just draws people. And I think the fact that it is such a citywide thing, you can worship with people from all different traditions of Christianity, all different styles and habits and circumstances. That is a really powerful thing too, like that we do this as a city and we do it for our city. A big part of our vision is to contend for God's purpose in our city through what we're doing. And I think, that resonates with people because I have a real heart for Winnipeg and Manitoba, and I believe God is really moving and bringing revival and, moving people's hearts towards Him. And this is one small but significant way that people can get in on that.
That's fantastic. You said contending for God's heart for the city. Can you say a little more of what that means?
Yeah, so when we started, like the three pillars I said are worship, communion, and fellowship. Our second year of ministry, we felt really called to start some kind of a prayer component as well. Just felt like God was saying, like, start praying for your city. So that first year, we had some really great prayer coordinators who hosted small prayer meetings every other week where we would just pray for the city. And it was kind of the first few months, I was like, I think we're doing the right thing. I think this is really what God is calling us to do. But also sometimes, like, revival can be such a buzzword. And I don't know. I was like, are we chasing the right thing? Like, I think this is what we're supposed to do. But also, it was pretty slow going, and not very many people were coming to the prayer meetings. Like, at that time, second year, maybe 450 people would come out to worship, but like 12 people would come to a prayer meeting. And so I think that, like, two things ended up coming from that. One of them was throughout that year, just a whole bunch of events happened, conversations around Winnipeg, where I just became really convinced that we were on the right track, that God was bringing this to our city, and it was His desire, is always His desire, to revive and renew the hearts of His people and bring others close to Him. And so we could not go wrong praying for that. And the second thing I realized is that there's just so many people who don't understand the joy of prayer. And kind of sprouting from that, we've had a continued emphasis on prayer, and it looks different now than the biweekly prayer meetings that we did a few years ago. But that's been a big part of, like, contending. We want to get behind what God is doing in our city. We want to add to it. We don't want to detract from what God is doing in the local church. That's why we only meet every other month, because we don't want to meet so frequently that people might start to feel like we are their church or we are their community. We're not there to disciple people. We're not there to bring teaching currently. We're just there to be a place of encouragement, like a well. People can come. get water, be encouraged, and then go back out to their local churches and their daily lives.
That's fantastic. Have you seen stories of God moving through Bread We Break already? Do you have any stories
Yeah,
for us?
definitely. Yeah, I mean, like, there's lots of stories from just like what God does, like at an event on any given night. Like, we hear all the time that people say we come because the Holy Spirit is there. Like, we can notice that he's there and he moves when I'm there. And like, we have a prayer team that's always at the back, and so throughout the evenings while we say, if you need prayer, if God is stirring something in you, there's people who want to pray with you and who want to touch base with you. So the prayer team always has a lot of stories of just people encountering God in new ways, people overcoming challenges in their lives, receiving some support, making friendships. There was a guy a couple years ago who felt like he felt like God was calling him to start exploring like spoken word. And so we were like, yeah, well, let's, like, we have this platform, let's do this together. I think you have stuff to say that God's putting on your heart. So, like, what is that? And he wrote something that was really powerful, and then he came on our stage and gave that spoken word piece, and that was really powerful. We give testimonies every time. There's at least 2 people from the community who will share a small part of their story, and we always hear lots of response of how that touches people as well. Last year we did an intercession event where we had 5 hours of worship and prayer on a Friday night. On Saturday we gathered back, prayed together, and then went out onto the streets just to pray for people and love people and have conversation. And I think like 3 people came to Christ that day.
Wow.
And at least one of those guys came to our event, like our Big Bread We Break event, the next night, and came and introduced himself and like just started engaging. And just the like church unity, like we have been so encouraged by all the individual churches that we've been in contact really with, as like, this is something that's needed. This is something that's building up the young adults of our city and that God is using. Yeah, lots of stories and lots of feedback of God taking people the next step on their journey in those times. Like, yeah, whether it's coming to Christ, getting out of like finding freedom and deliverance from a bad habit or a bad relationship, or just some stronghold, or just support people who don't go to a local church, come and find a church through Bread We Break, or get connected with people that change their lives. One of my best friends I met at Bread We Break, and she's been life-changing and impacting to me, and God has used her a lot in my life, and that's that fellowship part taking root.
Yeah, I love that it seems to be bringing people together who wouldn't necessarily be in the same room together. So the worship ends up being this communal, corporate thing. Hey?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So I want to get back to this worship music thing. Now, in a lot of church circles, when you say worship, the first thing you think of is a band playing, right? The music, the sung part. How would you define worship?
I would define worship as our response to who God has shown himself to be. So God has revealed himself to us. He's given us his word, the Bible. He's given us the church, personal relationships, all these various ways that he speaks to us, that he's shown us even just a tiny glimpse of his glory and his goodness and his beauty. And our response to that is worship, whatever that looks like. So obviously we mostly, as a community, we mostly worship through music. And so it's musical worship. But on like this past September, just a few months ago for our kickoff event, our theme was worship. And we had 3 different people come and share short testimonies on what worship looks like for them outside of music, other ways that they worship and connect with God. So someone talked about, like one of our volunteers, Jill, she does the lighting for us all the time. And she talked about how for her running lights is worship, and she meets with God that way and responds to him that way. Someone talked about conversation with people and how just conversing with people and having good interactions with people can bring him closer to God. And someone else talked about just in a musical worship setting, just like sitting in silence and observing people around her, how God speaks to her in that way too. So it can look like a billion different things. Totally. But music is such a unifying thing that most people can really get behind. And that's what makes the corporate part of it so powerful.
Now I hear Bread We Break is also recording an EP right now. Is that right?
Yes, we are. Yeah, our band that came together for our very first event, like 3.5 years ago, was just such a miracle. None of us, it was all just friends of friends. None of us knew all of the people in that band, but 6 of us or 7 of us got together, and we practiced and we played that first event, and we've all been playing together for 3.5 years since then, except for a keys player. I think keys players for us are like Defense Against the Dark Arts teachers for Hogwarts. You just can't keep them around. But yeah, so about a year ago we started, or a year and a half ago maybe, we started writing music and sharing it with our community and using it in our worship services. And just getting a lot of people asking, like, are there recordings of this? How can I listen to this at home? And just decided that we wanted to be able to resource our community and have an adventure and just give our community another tool to worship at home by recording an EP. So it'll be a 5-song EP of original songs. We crowdfunded it in the spring, summer, and our community just got really behind the project and contributed. And so we're working on that now.
And you have one of them recorded already, right? It's ready to go?
Yes, we do. We have one single already. It's called In Your Midst.
Awesome. And we actually have that ready to play, so let's have a listen to that now.
Father, you captivate my heart. Father, you satisfy all my desires. Your love is so relentless. Pursuing forever, you're faithful. I will run to you, my first love, and in your midst I find who I am. Father, you captivate my heart. Father, you satisfy all my desires. Your presence in me and all around. You're faithful to never stop chasing me down. I will run to you, my first love, and in I surrender to you, Jesus. All I am, all I have, take everything. I surrender to you, Jesus. All I am, all I have, take everything. I surrender to you, Jesus. All I am, all I have, take everything. I surrender to you, Jesus, to you, Jesus. I will run to you, my first love, and in your midst I find who I am, and I will run to you, my first love, and in your midst I find who I am, and I will run to you, my first love, and in your midst I find who will run to you, my first love, and in your midst I find who I am.
How long did it take to record that in studio?
I think from the time that we did the scratch track, which was just like acoustic and vocals, that we then layered everything on top of, I think maybe a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm imagining that when you're playing in front of a whole crowd of people, you can see them responding, you're working off the community. What's it like to do worship music in a studio setting where it's just you and this mic and a sound guy?
Yeah, it was so interesting. It was really fun. Like, it's a really fun experience. Before we play live, like, I almost always say, like, I really don't care about perfection in the band. Like, we practice and we want to be excellent and we want to do our best. But after we practice and it's time to actually lead, I would way rather people have a worshipful heart than play perfect notes. But in a studio, you have the opportunity to do both because you can do so many takes, so you can get it musically really, really good. And it still felt like worshipful because we were all so, like, we're really behind this project from a like spiritual point. Like, it's not just like a fun, cool thing. Like, we really want to bless our community with this and believe that this is a good thing. So with that conviction, it was easy to worship and be able to work on the technical things in the studio.
So another difference between the live audience and the studio recording is that I've heard that you get into some interesting prayer postures when you're leading worship.
Me?
Yeah, I've
Yeah.
heard stories about lunging and
yeah.
a worship brow that gets on your face too.
Yeah.
Are there others? What are your worship postures here?
Well, the one that I may be best known for is the Titanic.
The Titanic.
the Titanic and lunge. The Titanic and lunge, I would call it. It's like you're standing tall, arms are way back, like Rose and Jack at the very tip of that ship.
Yeah.
But then sometimes my knees just buckle, and then I just go down and back up. And I don't know.
That's amazing.
Everyone's got one.
And from when I've been there to watch it, you somehow have a way of projecting, even in a kneeling posture, and it's incredible.
Yeah.
You got to come see it, people. That's great. You are now also doing a worship apprenticeship with MB Mission.
Yes,
team,
I am.
right? Can you say a little bit about that?
Yeah. So the very, very short story is that over the last 9 years of my life, I've been discerning a call to ministry that God's given me. And the last few years, especially since Bread We Break started, I just started to discern more and more that he's calling me to worship ministry, which is kind of a tough area to make it in life. And I had prayed and told the Lord, like, I won't pursue this as a vocation unless I really feel confident that you're calling me to this. Because otherwise it's so easy to just volunteer in worship ministry and be able to be part of it that way. But I received that call and had that certainty. And then through a series of events, I ended up at MB Mission. So I'm doing a 3-year apprenticeship in worship ministry and prayer ministry. And the two of those are just super linked for me, intercession and music ministry. And so the next 3 years will kind of be exploring what that looks like exactly in the context of missions, both locally and internationally.
So music as a way of expressing worship changes mood quite a bit, right? Like when you have a minor key going, it changes the way that you're feeling in the space compared to happy music or whatever.
Yeah.
So music, as opposed to other forms of worship, actually has a lot of power over a person's like feelings. Now, some people really engage that, and others I've heard, feel a little bit more suspicious toward it. So how can music be used well to create a worship environment?
I think that God created music with the power and capacity to affect the human heart, which is a gift. But all gifts can be misused. And so music can be used to manipulate and to pull people's heartstrings and draw on their emotions and kind of fabricate something that, it can fabricate an experience that might not actually be genuine and might not actually be of God. So the way that I use music, I'm not afraid of a minor key. I'm not afraid of someone feeling music. I used to, if I was ever speaking in a transition between songs, I wouldn't want music playing behind me. I would just want to speak because I didn't want people's guards to go up feeling like maybe I was manipulating them or anything. And then I learned like the power of music is a gift from God, and it's a gift that is supposed to be used. God is the only being that could choose his surroundings and what exactly heaven is like, and he chose to surround himself with music and with worship, and it's good. It's created really good. So kind of after realizing that, I stopped being afraid of using it and just kind of I worry about the position of my heart and why am I doing what I'm doing. And if someone has an issue with it or if someone feels uncomfortable, like that's okay. They're totally entitled to that. I'm always open to have conversations with people about why we do what I do. But something else I've learned within worship ministry is that it can be so divisive, and there will always be someone who doesn't really like what you're doing. And so for me, a lot more of it is about knowing my own motives and having a clear conscience and listening to the Holy Spirit and then using my gifts the best I can. And I care about what congregations want and what they might not like, but I don't let that rule my decisions.
And I think there's an authenticity in that too, to say it's about where your heart is as a worship band, as a team leading. That's really good. What about embarrassing stories? As a worship leader, you must have some occasions where things just totally don't go according to plan.
Yeah, there are a few. Even those worship poses, sometimes it's like, I've talked about that with other friends of mine that lead worship, and it's like, yeah, everybody's got one. Everyone has these physical expressions of what's going on in their heart that is like genuine and good, but it looks so dumb sometimes. And so that's a very humbling aspect of worship leading, is knowing that you're being seen, and sometimes you end up doing something that looks stupid, and that's okay. Other stories. Well, Colin already introduced one of my stories about the bronze feet of Jesus.
The big reveal. You're the bronze feet lady.
It was me. To a group of like 300 high school kids, just going on and on about the bronze feet, and I didn't know what I was saying. So that was humble. That was embarrassing. And my other favorite one is our band was once doing a song called "Worthy of It All," which is a really beautiful song. It just a lot of the lyrics like mirror the throne room passage in Revelation. We were in a really beautiful time of worship. We were maybe like half an hour in or something, so people were like really focused on the Lord and really worshiping. And then we start this song, and I couldn't find the key, so I walked around to every single person in the band on the stage and said, "Can you hear it? Can you hear it? Can you hear it?" And everyone's like, "No, I can't. So I just kind of picked a note. I was like, I guess we got to start. So I just picked something, and it was wrong. And so then we just like broke the moment, stopped everybody, stopped all the music, and restarted, which was really funny. Like everyone started laughing, right? There's hundreds of people there who were in this moment. And at first there's like this disappointment that I had of like, oh, we were in this place, we're in this beautiful place, and people were focused on Jesus, and now they won't be because the music stopped. And this is exactly what we were talking about how music has such power, but God has so much more power. And like as soon as we started the song, like nothing was broken in that moment, nothing went wrong. It's like kind of embarrassing, and we laugh about it later. But that worship service wasn't dependent on flawless musicianship. It was dependent on God's Spirit and what he was doing. So people just jumped right back into worship, and it worked out great, but it was funny.
Oh, totally. You got to be able to laugh at yourself sometimes.
Totally.
Actually, the way one of my mentors puts it is you should be fully invested in things, but never taking yourself too seriously. Mm-hmm. I think that sounds like an important part of this.
I agree. And worship leading, like it is on a stage, the way that it works in the West. A lot of the time you're on a stage and there's lights on you and you have a microphone, and it is good to have situations that force you to stay humble. It is hard to be up there all the time. And making mistakes sometimes is like just the best thing you can do.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Laughter should be part of worship too, as far as I'm concerned.
I totally agree. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So before we go, I'd love to hear what's next for you. We're about to go into the Christmas tradition. Are there any traditions you have as a family?
Christmas traditions. Well, ever since I was very little, my grandma makes like homemade gingerbread house pieces, like this pattern. There's 6 of us between myself, my brothers, and my cousins. And we go to her house every year and we make gingerbread houses, and it's pretty precious and cute because we're all adults now. And we're doing that this weekend. So that's a Christmas tradition I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, that'll be great. And you're going to Regina, I know that much.
Yes. Yes, a fun fact is that David and I grew up across the street from each other when we were little kids. We went to elementary school together, lost touch for years and years, and now we are dating siblings.
Yeah.
So my boyfriend and David's girlfriend are siblings, and so we are both going to Regina to join in another family's Christmas traditions this year.
Again,
really
Saskatchewan,
fun.
The place to be.
The promised land. The dream. Yeah.
It's totally true. Well, Sarah, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
That was Sarah Froese from Bread We Break. All right, guys. So we asked her a little bit about her Christmas traditions. Now, I want to know from you guys, what are some of your Christmas traditions? What kind of stuff do you like to do? The next time we meet for our podcast will be after Christmas, so we got to find this out now. Otherwise, we'll miss our chance. So, David, tell me a little bit about your Christmas traditions.
Well, the first things I remember from growing up were that we would actually go as a family to cut down a tree together. That was pretty cool.
You would cut down a tree at Christmas time?
I mean, not on the day, but like before.
But in the Christmas season, you would go into the wilderness and cut down a tree.
We would do it.
That is weird.
And a Christmas tree, just to clarify.
All right.
Was it a Christmas tree at the moment you cut it down, or did it become one after you cut it down?
If a Christmas tree falls in the woods, is it? I don't know where to go.
Does it make a Santa Claus sound?
Or does it Doesn't make Santa Claus cry. Anyway, please carry on. I've hijacked your
No, that's
tradition.
great. So we'd cut down a Christmas tree and decorate it together, and then go tobogganing on Christmas Day. So it's very outdoorsy. Now, as we grew up, we lost that somewhere along the way. Cold isn't quite as fun as it used to be.
No, that's true.
So we mostly stay in now and have a bunch of appetizers on Christmas Eve and play board games. Usually Settlers of Catan, the classic. And then wake up the next morning and do the gift thing.
Speaking of cold weather, David, I don't know, you guys from Ohio and Alabama who are listening to this podcast, you'll have no
They're
idea
from
about
all
this.
over.
All over.
But
Latin America, I'm
that's
sure.
right. But you'll have no idea about the snow that just dumped in our hometown of Winnipeg yesterday. It was unbelievable. The drives have increased by more than twice.
Yeah, what you're trying to say is the drive to and from work or to get somewhere now takes you a lifetime, right?
That's exactly what I'm trying to
that
say,
is-
Carson.
I picked up on that. Thanks.
Yeah. So, but anyway, Carson, do you have any Christmas traditions?
I do, but I really need to hear yours.
Fine, I'll go first.
Go
When I was young, I used to my favorite thing, probably my favorite gift to get, was every Christmas I get a Lego set.
Yes.
And it was the best because you know what's coming. You know you're gonna get that Lego set, and then I would spend a couple hours at my grandparents' house building the Lego set, and that's how it would spend Christmas Day or Christmas Eve or whatever it was. So that was my favorite. That was definitely my favorite. How about you, Carson?
Oh, this is such a great segue. When I was a kid, one of my Christmas traditions, and this was my own personal tradition, was to go around the house looking for my Christmas gifts.
Nice.
Yeah, and so I found one year a space Lego set. Spoiled Christmas for me. Not so much. I was still pretty excited to get that Lego set. But legit Christmas traditions, I don't know. Let's see. What some of you may not know is that I'm Sarah's grandpa, and so each year we make these gingerbread houses out of small pieces of gingerbread. Again, not true. We don't have any hard and fast traditions. Since having kids, we take them to go see the Munch show at the Prairie Theater Exchange every year, and we've been doing that since Caleb was a baby, so that's 11, 12 years now. So that's become our family tradition. But this year, my mom's coming into town in a couple of days, and she'll be spending Christmas with us, and we're really looking forward to that. And so I don't know if I mentioned this at all yet today, but Star Wars comes out tonight.
Yeah,
and so
that's
we're going to
right,
go
yeah.
see Star Wars as a family tonight. And I'm going to take my mom to see Star Wars too, because that was always a big part of my youth, and she would encourage that, and she would attend the movies. Either she or my dad would, as I was too young to go on my own.
Wow.
And so they sort of really like Star Wars too, or at least they pretended to. But it makes me think about the whole tradition of movie viewing at Christmas. And I mean, you probably know that a lot of major films are released on Christmas Day.
Yeah, totally.
And I can't understand that at all. Now, I know I just told you I'm going to movies this year, but I don't understand getting up on Christmas morning, opening your stuff, and going to a movie. It just kind of seems weird to me. But, a few people do this.
That's their tradition, yeah.
Right.
Wow.
So anyway, that's just one I haven't been able to get my head around. Nor have I really been able to understand this whole concept of cutting down a tree in a forest and calling that a Christmas tree. Like that, you have some really unique traditions in your family, David.
And can I just say too, like I would much rather go out and cut down a tree than go see a movie.
Maybe, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it depends how cold it is.
That's
That
right.
really does.
He did touch on the cold.
It
That's
depends
right.
if Mark Hamill is in the film or not.
Right.
Now, I think to really impress me and make that story unique, David, if I can offer some criticism, some critique here, is if you had turned that tree into the toboggans you used later that day. That would have been pretty cool.
Well, it would really add that reduce, reuse, recycle part to the whole cutting down the trees.
It's true.
Balance that
It's
off
true.
a little bit.
Christmas toboggan.
I'll propose it to my family this time.
See how they
around.
feel, but
yeah.
I don't know if you can do that kind of thing in Saskatchewan. They might have laws against that. We're going on. Obviously, I'm going on and on and on. But I want to turn this around because a moment ago, Cullen mentioned the fact that we could have listeners in Wichita or Alabama or anything, and I really believe that. And I want to pose a question to our audience this time around. And this one's for you, Billy in Wyoming. We want to hear what your interesting, unique, different, strange Christmas traditions are. And now there's a couple of ways you can get that back to us. If you're listening, watching this, I guess you're just more or less listening to this on YouTube. you can leave a comment below and tell us what that is. Or if you want to email us, then by all means do that. nonamepod@gmail.com. That's nonamepod@gmail.com. And one more pitch. We just got this this podcast put on iTunes recently. And that's kind of cool for us.
yeah.
So if you're an iTunes listener, a subscriber, whatever that is, then you just get on the old computer or your smartphone and add us by searching No Name Podcast, big blue avatar. You can't miss us. And we would love that. And if you're not an Apple person, and I do believe there are a few people out there who aren't, there's got to be some other podcast aggregates out there. I'm sure. I just pay very little attention to them because I'm an Apple guy. And I'm done talking. Let's just get on with the holidays. Let's have an amazing Christmas, folks. Colin, you did a fantastic job leading us today.
Well, yes, thanks, guys. And one last word: may the force be with you.
Yes.